Hello and welcome to the podcast of the Prison Officers Association, the UK's largest professional union for prison, correctional and secure psychiatric workers with over 30,000 members. Well, welcome to this special episode of the POA podcast, focusing particularly on health and safety. And we've got a huge range of expertise and experience in the room with us, and I'll allow colleagues to introduce themselves so you know who's here.
Joe Simpson, Deputy General Secretary and Chair of the Health and Safety Committee.
I'm Mick Pimlett, Assistant General Secretary and part of the Health and Safety Committee.
I'm Andy Baxter, POA Assistant General Secretary.
Great. Well, you're all very welcome indeed. And what we're going to do in this episode is look at the main features of the health and safety structure in the prison service, and then what the main issues are and what the union's contribution is to try and address those issues and make sure that members are well looked after at their place of work. So, Mick, perhaps the place to start is the health and safety protocol between HMPS and the union. What is that? Why was it needed? Where did it come from? How does it work?
Yes, and I think it's important to outline the history of where the health and safety protocol came from. And basically in October 2018, our members at HMP Lindholm arrived at work to hear that two of their colleagues had been badly assaulted the previous evening. HMP Lindholm at the time was one of 10 prisons that had been highlighted by HMPPS as having acute problems with high drug use, violence, and also the actual fabric of the buildings. The branch committee also had long-held concerns regarding the safety of the prison, and as a result of them assaults, they did not feel safe in following the full regime that day, and they therefore carried out a controlled regime. The POA branch committee, supported by an NEC member, tried to engage with local prison management, but they were accused of unlawfully inducing industrial action by management. The prison service then subsequently brought a claim against the POA for an injunction and breach of Section 127, and the POA then decided to bring a counter-claim against the prison service for unsafe working conditions, including adequate numbers of staff, having to deal with high levels of drugs, weapons and assaults. We argued that in circumstances such as those of HMP Lindholm, the POA must be entitled to advise our members of their health and safety rights, and we must be able to take our concerns to management in order to get them resolved. In our counterclaim, we made it clear that we should be able to advise our members without being accused of inducing industrial action. And eventually, in late 2019, the prison service ultimately agreed to a settlement with an agreed health and safety protocol, which was also legally binding, where our members and branch committees have urgent health and safety concerns. Now, obviously, the health and safety protocol is a little bit convoluted. It goes on for a long time. But basically, the simple terms, the protocol states that officers have a reasonable expectation to work in a safe place with safe systems of work. Officers have a duty to protect their own and others' health and safety. And it was down to individual officers to exercise their own judgment about what steps to comply with the duty. And the POA could not advise what steps to take. So basically that meant we could not say to a group of members, the Employment Rights Act gives you the right to move to a place of safety because of imminent danger. However, we could advise them, individual members, what their rights were regarding health and safety, and it was then down to the individual to decide what actions to take and what the appropriate actions to take. It also agreed that, and the POA were in agreement, that it was unlawful under the current legislation to induce an officer not to perform their duties. But it was included in the protocol that an officer reasonably believes that there's a serious and imminent danger. It's for the officer to assess what steps are appropriate. And where these concerns took place, it was then incumbent on management to engage with the local POA committee or national officials as soon as possible or as soon as reasonable to do so. The protocol actually ensures that when members come to the POA with concerns, we can advise our members on their health and safety rights, and the prison service will not treat us as unlawfully induced industrial action. Now, that may seem like in other workplaces it's a given, but actually we know that from history with the POA, where we've been driven into court for breach of Section 127 of the Criminal Justice Act, that it's a dangerous thing for us as a trade union to actually act as a trade union, because we can be accused of inducing industrial action for some of the simple things that we advise on. So this was a valued protocol for us, and it's helped us move forward. And we now know how to address our health and safety concerns without being driven into court, to be honest with you, Simon.
Obviously, a tremendously important development, and one which makes sure that the individual is able to take responsibility for their own health and safety. But when they exercise that responsibility, they'll be able to receive support and a response from management. And we'll talk more about that later in this podcast. What's the role of safety inspections, Mick, in all this? Is it covered by the protocol, or is there a different set of arrangements?
Actually, safety inspections are not covered by the protocol. However, the protocol obviously relies on existing legislation such as the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which actually gives our union health and safety reps the ability to ensure that they can do workplace inspections and ensure that staff are properly trained in health and safety and they've got the correct equipment and so on. So although it doesn't actually refer to safety inspections within the establishment, them rights are already covered, as I say, by the Health and Safety at Work Act and the safety reps and safety committee regulations.
And just in case there are listeners who are totally uninitiated in terms of health and safety, although I scarcely believe there will be any in that category, but just so we're absolutely clear and we cover it, everyone, what is a safety inspection? Who does it? What's the purpose? What happens to the things that are found as a result of the inspection?
If I can come in there, Simon, on this one, the safety inspection is what we tell our health and safety reps is to divide the workplace up into sizable chunks. They then write to the governor and tell them that they're going to start a set of workplace inspections. And we encourage them to invite their counterpart from management to come along with them to look at the workplace, look at risk assessments, safe systems of work that are in there. Also talk to all members on the floor and question them about their knowledge of their workplace, because one of the things that we've been bringing up with management at the moment, and we've achieved a small win on it, is not everyone is trained in health and safety in the prison service, and there should be, because every worker should have a knowledge of what their employer is doing in the workplace to make sure they're safe. So the inspection comes around to that. Once the inspection's done, they then produce a report for the governor and also for our members on the findings. And if need be, if the findings are so dangerous, then they can go and make representations immediately to the governor because they need to be rectified. So that's, for us, that's where the protocol links in. Because if we're making those representations to the governor and the governor doesn't do anything about it, then we can seek injunctive relief on that, because that is us bringing concerns to the employer through it. So the inspections play a very, very vital role in the work of a health and safety rep in order for to make sure that our workplace can be as safe as possible.
Yeah, just like to mention regarding our POA website, actually, where we have a dedicated page regarding the resources that are available to union health and safety reps for the POA. And there's actually a very helpful document on there regarding workplace inspections, which gives staff a bit of a hint what they should be looking for regarding first aid, housekeeping and cleanliness, slip, trips and falls, adherence to cost regulations, manual handling regulations, and so on and so on. So actually, I think it would be beneficial to members to visit our website and check out the health and safety section of that.
Yep. Andy?
Just to add to what Mick and Joe have both said, it's also vital that our local health and safety reps get a seat and maintain that seat at the local management union health and safety committee meetings. It's vital that they use that position and that seat to build relations with the local health and safety managers and to have a voice. It's vital that they get onto that committee and maintain that going forward.
So far, we've spoken a lot about the safety protocol, and we've spoken about the importance of safety inspections and about the role of union safety reps in it. But what really is the role of the union safety rep, or the USR, as they're known? How do people become USRs, and how else can members get involved in health and safety?
As far as we're concerned, anybody can be a health and safety rep as long as they're a POA member. That's being a POA health and safety rep. All they have to do is make the committee aware that they would like to take on that role, because they don't have to actually be on the POA committee to be a health and safety rep, although we do encourage that. And we encourage all of our branch officials to do the TUC Stage 1 Safety Reps course, because that's what the HSC recognise when they're talking to health and safety reps. The process is quite simple. They make the pitch to the branch committee. The branch committee then appoint them, and then they go in front of the branch at the next possible meeting to inform them that the health and safety rep is, for instance, Joe Simpson. Any problems with health and safety, please go and see him. What we do try to encourage as well, because some of our workplaces are quite big, that we have more than one health and safety rep. Management in the prison service seem to think that they can dictate to us as a trade union as to how many safety reps we can have, which we then turn around and say, no, that's got nothing to do with you, the appointment of our safety reps. So we can have as many as we want. The only thing on that is the facility time. If you've got 8 health and safety reps, you can't have 8 health and safety reps doing training, or 8 health and safety reps doing inspections. What you can do is you can divide that work up and get the facility time to do that, because it is reasonable facility time. They also have to have an active role within the establishment, and that is they are entitled to go and inspect the workplace. They are entitled to investigate claims by our members about health and safety issues, and they're also entitled to go and see and make representations to the employer on behalf of that. We also encourage our health and safety reps to investigate any accidents and any assaults in the workplace. And this seems to be seen as, by management, as you can't do that. And what we keep pressing onto our health and safety reps and management as well, that we are, again, entitled to do that under the regulations. And we do give and we do tell our members that if they become a health and safety rep, as Mick has alluded to, all the information's on our website, but in particular, the Brown Book. Health and safety reps and trade union officials all know what the Brown Book is, because that's what it is. And it's the SRSC regs 1977.
So Safety Reps and Safety Committee Regulations 1977.
That's right. Yeah. And as the one regulation that every rep should read is Regulation 4, because that gives them the role, and it also gives them the responsibility, and it also gives them their rights under the legislation as well. And we do encourage our members to do that. Unfortunately, the employer doesn't see those regulations as we don't have to abide by them because we are HMPPS. And when HMPPS decided that they were no longer going to do their own workplace inspections, they got a shock when we told them, yeah, but we can still do ours and you can't stop that. On the facility time, we've had 2 wins on facility time where local management have turned around and said, no, you can't have facility time for that. And on a few occasions, the member then has put in a grievance, which is quite right, and then got initial legal advice. And we've won both cases in the employment tribunal, where the prison service were told that they had to do this. And also, for the first time ever in their health and safety statement, they have actually written into it the role of the health and safety rep. The union health and safety rep recognised it and informed managers that they have to give facility time as per the legislation. So we keep pushing and pushing, and we're getting some wins.
Mick?
Yeah, I think it's just important to add really what Joe just said, is that really the 77 safety reps and safety committee regulations state that all them things that Joe just mentioned, the 10 meetings of safety committees, investigate accidents and so on and so on, the facility time to do that is only available to recognise trade unions in the workplace. So although we can have other unions who may have health and safety reps in their workplace, they are not entitled to facility time to investigate accidents and attend meetings. I also think that it's important that although the health and safety reps don't need to be part of a local branch, I think it's important that they are part of the branch, because then they're accountable to their branch. And their work, such as looking at stress and workload, bullying, violence and so on, they're all industrial relations issues. And it's important that they work as part of a team with other branch officials. So I think it is beneficial for health and safety reps to be part of the POA committee, to be honest.
Sometimes you'll get a health and safety rep that doesn't want to be part of the committee. And they could be a good health and safety rep. We had one at my last establishment who didn't want to have anything to do with the committee because he didn't want to get involved in that side of it, but he wanted to be involved in the health and safety work, and he was very, very good at it. So we've done that. What they have to do is they have to attend branch meetings and branch committee meetings so they can report back to the committee and to the branch on the work that they've done on their behalf. And I reiterate what Mick says. We encourage them to be part of the committee because it's got to be part of that teamwork. And just because you're not a health and safety rep doesn't mean to say that you can't do anything under health and safety. You as an individual employee have the right to take your concerns to your employer, and they must listen to those concerns. But the easiest way to do it and the quickest way to do it is through your union health and safety rep. And I would encourage all branches, if you haven't got a rep, make sure that you appoint one and you ensure that our members know exactly who that person is, and to let us know who they are so we can get them on our database so we can start and support them from the centre.
Thank you, Joe. I mean, I think one of the ways in which individual members can exercise that right or that responsibility, if you like, if you turn it the other way around, is when it comes to risk assessments. And we'll come to that in just a moment. But as we're sitting here recording this, the government seems poised to dismantle the remaining constraints caused by COVID in the coming weeks. And of course, COVID on the prison estate has been a really, really difficult time. There've been some profound changes. The union's been on the front foot in terms of protecting members and inmates as well. How can the COVID experience, if you like, be summed up? What lessons do you hope the prison service will learn from this episode?
I think the lessons to be learned is COVID was very fast-paced, especially in the prison service, because I've said it on many occasions. Prisons are like petri dishes. Once you introduce something and it gets a hold, it grows at a great rate. And I think it was to get the staff on side with what management were doing. And I think the prison service failed on that point. And when I say that, it was a joint effort between the union and the employer to try and keep the virus out of our workplaces. The Omicron variant was just that unpredictable and that virulent. Basically, you were just firefighting and making sure that we kept it in one place. We tried to keep the outbreak down and things like that. But there was no management of it in prisons, because every time we brought them a problem, they were always saying, but your members are not doing this. They're congregating in a room and things like that. And the answer back from the union was, well, haven't you told them what you want? Because the prison service at the moment rely very much on the internet, where our members have to actually go onto a computer. Well, when you've got a computer amongst 30 members of staff, You're never going to get on it. When are you going to get on and do that? And I think what the prison service need to do is come back with the old, what we used to call the stick and whistle parade, or when you put it into trade union terms, into factories and things like that, toolbox talks, where you actually stand in front of the staff and say, right, there's a new risk assessment come out. This is what we need you to do, and this is what we need you to do to work safely. None of that went on. Nobody was challenging that behaviour. And one of the reasons, and the biggest reason for me, and I can't speak for Andy or Mick on this, is because they got rid of the one rank that would have looked after that and taken over, which was a senior officer. So there was nobody there to actually manage it on the ground floor, and staff were left to their own devices. And they weren't informed what management wanted from them and how to keep safe in the workplace. And there was a lot of confusion at the beginning. There was a lot of confusion at the end. And thankfully, we got through it. It was hard work for the National Executive Committee, because the amount of stuff that was coming out, obviously, because Public Health England, or the United Kingdom, I think it's the Health Security Agency as it's now known, were changing the rules differently as they found out more and more about the virus. And I think the prison service need to look at it and say, how could we have done that better? And the one thing that they could have done better was they could have related back to their employees, our members, in a much more decent way than just say to them, you've got to do this. Why? Because it says on the ADM, thanks very much, and walk away. That wasn't good enough for our members. They needed to be saying, we now need you to wear masks. We now need you to socially distance, and this is what we mean. I don't want to see 3 people in the office when there should be only 2. And nobody was challenging that behaviour. They were just taking note of it in order to say to us, well, your members are not doing what they're said to be doing. Then challenge it. That is your role as a manager, to challenge people if they're not abiding by a risk assessment or a safe system of work that you've put in place.
You mentioned toolbox talks, Joe, and we're going to try something like that here. And now, I think, aren't we, when we come to talk about risk assessments, and in particular, why they're important, how you do one, how individuals can contribute to their own health and safety at work as well. So perhaps I'll just hand the floor over to you.
The risk assessment is one of the most vital procedures, because you need to understand what hazards are in your workplace, and those hazards need to be risk assessed. I think at present, the prison service get away with it by the seat of the pants, really, because we have challenged as a union that there is a lack of training for our managers and our members who are managers, and I'm talking about the custodial manager role. There is no training for them. Yet a governor will turn around and say, well, I think you're a competent person, so you can go away and do that risk assessment. And we as a trade union believe that is very unfair on the CM rank, because they have got no training. And to be competent in anything, you've got to have the training in it. You know, you could turn around and say to Andy Baxter tomorrow, Andy, I think you're competent to be a pilot. Would you get on the plane? I'm sure I wouldn't get on the plane. And that's how the prison service view it. So the risk assessment really is to find out what hazards in your workplace. So that's the first thing. You look at the workplace and say, right, what can harm people in the workplace? And then you make a list of what can harm people in the workplace, and then put the severity. Then you've got to understand who it might harm. And then once you've got that listed, then you go on to, what can I do to minimize that risk? Can I get rid of it altogether? No, I can't. So therefore, what's the next step? Well, then I've got to reduce the access to that risk on behalf of my employees. Then once you've got that, they should record that risk assessment in writing to say that they've done it and what they have put in place to minimize that risk. And then the last part of it is they've got to then relate to their employees, because that risk assessment is their instruction to their employees to say, there is a danger here. This is what I need you to do in order to keep safe. The prison service forget the last two bits sometimes, but the last bit in particular, when they're not telling their staff the outcome of the risk assessment and how they should work in order to keep safe. So that part of it is vital, and it's vital that our members also have a part in that, because when doing a risk assessment, management have to take into account the opinions and the expertise of the staff who are working on the ground, and what will work and what won't work, and how they think they should operate in order to remain safe. So it's everybody's duty, but 90% of it, well, 100% of it really, is management's duty. And some people get a little bit mixed up when it comes to risk assessments. And for instance, we had a situation in the prison service where we've been trying to get rid of razors and ceramics. And the chief executive officer of HMPPS put out a note saying that they had to relook at all the risk assessments on ceramics and razor blades within their prison to see if the risk assessment was suitable and sufficient. Could I get rid of it or anything like that? And we as a union have successfully campaigned to have all ceramics removed from the workplace. So this note went out, and the governor then thought, fantastic. If I do a risk assessment, I can reintroduce the ceramic back into the workplace. Well, that's not what it's for, and that's not what Phil Coppell meant. If you didn't have ceramics in your workplace, then you didn't have to look at or revisit your risk assessment. He was happy with that. And on the razors issue, we're now starting to see the prison service start to eliminate them. You know, you're not going to eliminate all risk from our workplace, but you've got to reduce it. And how you reduce it is through the risk assessment process, but also training in the risk assessment process. Not just managers, but you need to train your staff as well, because they need to be able to read and understand a risk assessment. And they're not a difficult document. They're quite easy to read. They're quite easy to fill out, but it's actually going around and looking at the hazard. And, you know, you keep saying, oh, well, we need a risk assessment for, you know, some silly things like carrying a jug of hot water from the kitchen to your office table. We need a risk assessment for that. Well, we need a risk assessment on our major things that we do. And sometimes I think they overcomplicate the role and overcomplicate the risk assessment system, and it doesn't need to be.
Let's just re-emphasise what Joe says. I think the most important part of the risk assessment is the control factors that we include in our safe systems of work. And then safe systems of work control factors could be alarm bells, adequately trained first aid staff, adequately trained control and restraint staff, response levels, and so on. And I think what our members need to do is, if one of them control measures are not in place for whatever reason, the actual activity that's being undertaken has to be altered in a certain way by either cancelling the activity or providing further control measures in a different way. So I think the safe system of work is actually very important, as well as the risk assessment.
Yeah, it's the umbrella under which all other activity takes place, really, isn't it?
The one thing, Simon, if I can, and I forgot to mention it at the beginning, and I'm glad you've said that, the importance of reporting near-miss accidents, because the prison service don't encourage it. And the POA are definitely going to be encouraging it over the next couple of months, because by building the picture of a near-miss accident prevents that accident actually hurting somebody, and we need to do that. The private sector actually have got a good handle on it, really, because they realise that if they reduce their accidents and assaults in the workplace, that means, one, they're not going to get fined by the prison service, and two, they're not going to be paying out compensation to employees. So I think they buy into it, but the prison service don't, and we need to get that message over to say, if somebody comes along and verbally abuses you, go and put it in the accident book. Because few months, couple of years down the line, God forbid, after that verbal abuse becomes more and more often, you keep reporting it, then and you go off sick, you can turn around and say, well, actually, I have told you about it. You've done nothing about it. And what that does, it assists our lawyers in making a decent claim for that member of staff. But it's not just purely about that. It's about preventing that accident happening by saying, well, I've seen this today. Something could have happened there. And then management are duty bound to go and investigate it. And if need be, remove that potential hazard. That doesn't happen. And we want that to happen.
Yeah. Prevention really is better, cheaper, more effective than cure. Mick?
Yeah, just as the STO responsible for legal services as well, we quite often see where our members are assaulted, it will come back as a merit assessment with less than 50% chance of success because the prison service's defence is that the incident was unforeseeable. And a lot of the time, the incident has been foreseeable because we know that prisoners have been acting in a certain violent and refractory way. But as Joe says, the near-misses have not been completed. If them near-misses forms are completed, that could pump a case up for our members to over 50% chance of success, and we can take HMPPS for court.
Really important to remember that. Yeah. I think we've had a good run around the key issues of concern. But if I could ask each of you now, before we bring the podcast to a close, about what you think the priority areas are for the union in terms of its health and safety work over the next 3 to 6 months, I wonder what they would be. Andy, would you like to go first?
I think the priority should be, Simon, that our local health and safety reps in establishments, that they feel supported, that they feel valued, because they certainly have a vital role. And again, re-emphasise the comment I made earlier about getting that engagement on the local PWA management health and safety meeting. I think that's vital. Other sort of national issues, again, coming back on what Joe said, trying to get the razor blades removed, ceramics removed. Ultimately, if we don't get them removed, then what we do need are stronger control measures and strong, safe systems of work in relation to their presence. And the simple things like the issue of the razor blades and things like that must be tightened up.
And Andy, I believe regime management plans are going to be important in the months ahead.
I think it's really important that as we move forward and see regimes start to open up, that it's vital that local committees ensure that they have a fit-for-purpose regime management plan. That plan should be agreed locally, but it should also be policy compliant. The regime management plan, in essence, is an agreement from HMPPS that if governors only have 70% of the staff, then they can only deliver 70% of the work. The policy has been in place for almost 5 years now, and it's not unreasonable that every branch should have an agreed and policy compliant plan. If local branches are still having issues around regime management plans, we would urge them to contact their area NEC representative, and they'll be more than happy to offer support.
And Mick, what would be your top of your list?
The top of my list would be exactly the same, I would hope, as HMPPS's priorities, and that would be to provide a safe place of work for our members and for prisoners. And I cannot see for the life of me why ourselves as health and safety reps and HMPPS's employers have different priorities. We should have the same priorities to protect our members and protect those in our care. Finally
to you, Joe.
For me, over the next 3 to 4 months, what I would like to see is all of our members make themselves aware of the risk assessments and the safe systems of work in their workplace. And I would encourage them to work to them because they are there for their safety and to ensure that they remain safe whilst they're in the workplace. And the other thing as well, I would say to all safety reps, get hold of your health and safety advisor, who's the band for, and make sure that all risk assessments and safe systems of work are printed off and actually put into the workplace rather than keep them on a computer. Going forward, what would I expect? One of the big things that we've been working on at the moment is the carrying aid. Over the years, prison officers have had a multitude of kit put on them: the baton, the parva, rigid bar handcuffs, fish knife, first aid, resuscitation kits, radio, and this has all gone onto our members' waists on the utility belt. And we're starting to see a few people developing bad backs, bad posture, hips, knees, and also ankles with the weight, which can go up to 5 kilo. Now, when you're walking around with that on your waist for quite some time, especially over a 12-hour shift, that can really take its toll. The prison service, unsurprisingly, are not happy that it would be a vest. We've been looking at various things, and we are hoping that over the next few months that we will get that put in place for our members. Because what we're trying to do is we're not trying to make it look militaristic. What we're trying to do is prevent injury in the future. So if there's nothing wrong with you now while you're carrying that kit, you don't know what damage is being done to your musculoskeletal system while you're carrying it, and then it's too late once you get further down the road and you start getting injuries and things like that. So that's one of them. I think also we haven't seen the back of COVID, and we need to work together with the employer to do that. One of the good things that came out of COVID, there come out something called the Winter Policy, which for me was one of the most proactive documents that I've seen come out of HMPPS in a long time. And it was dealing with staff coming to work with influenza. It was talking about sickness and diarrhea and things like that. Fantastic document telling staff what they needed to do. And where did they put it? On the internet. So it's this big secret, instead of just saying, look, we've got this document, we need to sit down and tell you, because, if you're not going to tell people what they need to do, they're not going to be able to do it. And I think that's the biggest failing of HMPPS. They don't talk to their employees, and we hope that will change in the future.
That was POA Deputy General Secretary Joe Simpson and Assistant General Secretaries Mick Pimlett and Andy Baxter. The message is clear. The union works hard to make sure that the health, safety and well-being of all its members, wherever they are, is at the heart of all that it does. But the union is only as strong as its members, and the more members the union has, the louder the union's voice. So, if you're listening to this and haven't signed up, speak to your local POA rep today, or head over to poauk.org.uk to find out how to join and all the information you need about the union and the work that it does. Thank you for listening. We hope you like what you've heard and will join us for the next episode of the POA podcast. Thanks and goodbye.